Welcome. You're listening to The Aligned Self, Conversations in Creating a Conscious and Abundant Life. This is Daniel Denovi. I'll be your guide and host. Let's see just where we can take this. Hello, friend, and welcome back to the conversation. This is part 2 of the tools of self-awareness. I ended up going about 40 minutes for the entire episode, so I broke it up into 2 parts to make it more digestible. So if you haven't yet listened to part 1, Tools for Self-Awareness, I suggest you go back there first. It should be the episode just before this. That way you'll have a greater sense of continuity. In this episode, we pick up with the idea of enlisting friends or loved ones in your pursuit of self-awareness. So without further delay, we'll jump right in. Now, if you can enlist the aid of a friend or a partner in crime, you can do a 20 questions kind of thing. There are games that have nothing but questions, kind of deep questions, ethical questions. How would you respond in this situation? What would your actions be over here? I don't remember the name of the game. My wife had purchased, there's like cubes, there's like 100 questions in each plastic cube, and there's like 4 of them. So 400 questions, and these are party favors. And I don't remember what it's called, but I'm sure you can find it if you search on the internet. A variation of this is, as I've been writing my book on subpersonalities, I'm preparing to have interviews and go on different podcasts to talk about my book. And so I asked ChatGPT, I said, I'm preparing to be interviewed on different podcasts about my book. Ask me a list of questions that will prepare me for my interview. And it asked me some darn good questions, actually helped me reorder or reorganize some aspects of my book based on those questions. I just had a memory pop in my head. Thank you very much to my other than conscious mind. When I was, 16 or 17, I had met a girl at a church retreat, and I fell madly in love with her. As we were parting, she wanted to know what my turn-ons and turn-offs were. I said, what do you mean? Write me a list of your turn-ons and turn-offs, and then send it to me. We had exchanged addresses and all that before internet, before email, because she lives 200 miles away in the state of Michigan. And so I sat down and I thought this was an interesting assignment. And I wrote down all the things that turn me on, that excite me, that interest me. For instance, my uncle had just bought a Cadillac Eldorado, and I can remember sitting in it and smelling the leather. I just really loved the smell of the leather. So I wrote that down. In fact, I wrote down 100 different things that I found to be a turn-on in life. Aspects of nature, different aspects of the female form. I like short skirts, long legs. There were things that I wrote down everything. And I can remember having an emotional feeling about all that stuff. And then I started writing down the things that turn me off. Baked beans, complaining people, gossip, humidity. I wrote down everything. And what I ended up with was a real good picture of my likes and dislikes. I ended up not ever sending this to this girl. I fell out of love with her. I fell out of interest. I was more interested in that assignment. That was more exciting to me than she was. And also it was at a time where I was driving my parents' car, and the idea of driving 200 miles to go meet a girl and hang out with her, only to have to drive home, wasn't all that exciting to me. But this assignment could have been an assignment from the universe, for all that matter. As I was reviewing the list, I realized that it was kind of a mishmash. It wasn't very organized, so I started categorizing different likes, categorizing different dislikes, and I started seeing themes and patterns. That was a very revealing exercise. Now, another tool that you can use is have your partner in crime, your significant other, your friends, review you. What are your attributes? What are your 5 positive attributes? What are your 5 negative attributes from their perspective? And don't take this personal. Tell them that you're not going to take it personal. You just want an assessment. And whatever comes up, just take a look at it and be with it. Remember, sometimes we ask things and we don't necessarily like the answer. So if we don't actually utilize the information, chances are we're not going to get that person to participate with us in the future. Now, in the corporate world, they have the 360 interview, where you ask 5 different people about your attributes, your failings, and your strengths. And the idea around that is that they get a 360 or a holistic view of your strengths and weaknesses. There's personality tests, which by and large I'm not a fan of because I think they pigeonhole you, but it's a way to gain access to see what your patterns are. When I was 19, I took a personality test. When I was at Success Motivation Institute, I was looking at taking on a franchise when I was 19 in Waco, and they put me through this assessment. And one of the things that came up is that, they said, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it could potentially cause you problems. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. I wasn't really even aware of it. But I tended to put from my personality at that time is I tended to put other people's wants and needs ahead of mine. Other people's goals were more important than mine. Well, had I heeded that information when I was 19, I probably would not have gotten married when I was 25. It would have saved me from being divorced at age 30. And that points to the idea that insight doesn't necessarily change anything. It just gives you an awareness. And it wasn't until my life came to a head when I was 28 where I really realized that I had put my life, my wants and needs, on the back burner. And I essentially came to a point, what I consider a midlife crisis at 28. And a midlife crisis is essentially you arrive at somewhere between 40 and 50, and you realize that all the dreams that you had when you were younger, you put on the back burner. You put them aside to create a family. You put them aside for a relationship. You put them aside for a different job. And then you come to a point in midlife where you realize that, you're not getting any younger. And if you're going to live your life, now's the time. It's this time, this realization where a lot of people will end relationships, they'll get a divorce, they'll leave a job, they'll start a business. They do big things to shake up their life. And it will usually fly in the face of what other people in their life consider, quote unquote, normal. They think they're sowing the wild oats. They have a loose gasket. There's something wrong with them. They have to get something out of their system. But this midlife crisis is such a prevalent occurrence that a lot of people put their wants and needs, their dreams, on the back burner. The career they wanted to pursue, or the hobby, or the music, or they come to a point in their life where they're not satisfied, and they look at their past dreams and they realize that they had thrown their dreams away. They had put them aside. Well, this is all too common. So if you can gain this awareness earlier in life to really claim and live your life from inner signals, be inner directed, you'll save yourself a lot of time. But reflecting back on when I was first told when I was 19 that I had this predisposition to put other people's goals and wants and needs ahead of mine, I know where I got it. I got it from my dad. I even got it from my mom. But to be truthful, I didn't understand that. I didn't have that realization until I was in my 40s. And that brings me to the point that I brought up in another episode. This self-awareness is peeling back layers of onions. There's multiple aspects, multiple dimensions of ourself. There's a lot of ideas that have been relegated to our other than conscious mind as we are growing up. Old memories that haven't been processed, traumas that haven't been processed. As you uncover stuff from the past, remember that your ultimate freedom is to choose your response. And so you can embrace the story of your victimhood, embrace the story of your hurt and your pain, or embrace the story of your healing, of your victory. The last tool that I want to leave you with today, or the mindset that I want to leave you with today, and it's not by far the only one left, but it's the last one I'm going to talk about today, and that is get out of your head. You see, we have a tendency to think about things in our head. We get caught up in what I refer to as sometimes as mental masturbation. It's self-soothing. It seems like we're thinking, but we're just replaying the same old stuff over and over and over again. We're not very mindful, and this is how you get out of your head. You become mindful of what's currently going on. You become present to your feelings, present to the interactions around you, the impact of your behavior. This is the witness position in the 5 perceptual positions. You take an observer stance. And if you don't remember, the 5 perceptual positions were talked about just a couple episodes ago. And since we're talking about perceptual positions, asking your friends, asking your loved ones, your partner in crime, what are your 5 best attributes? What are your 5 failings? Or areas of opportunity. Let's say that, areas of opportunity. That's taking the second position, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. What's it like for them to be with you? Now, I just had something pop in my head, and as this frequently does, when I was talking about the third position, the observer position, One of the things you can do that will give you an interesting perspective on you is set up a remote camera and record yourself. I mean, let people know that you're recording, but record yourself walking, record yourself talking and walking, and then review it. One of the things I became aware of once I started podcasting is the inordinate number of filler words I had been using. And through that self-awareness, I've been able to eradicate a lot of the filler words I used to use. You know, ums and ahs and ands. And what's interesting is once I got rid of those, I started saying like. And I never said like before. But recording yourself gives you a lot of information by which you can reflect on. In my signature coaching program, The Aligned Self, I have people record themselves in a video. I have them record themselves walking. And when you review yourself walking, how is your posture? How are you carrying your weight? Is it balanced? Are you favoring one leg over the other? Now, I'm an expert in nonverbal communication, and I watch people all the time, not typically consciously, but other than consciously. When I see something that doesn't quite fit, or I should say that when my other than conscious mind notices something that's a little out of the ordinary, it makes me consciously aware of it. I guess I should explain that. See, when I wanted to become an expert in nonverbal communication, there are so many different things that pay attention to. It is beyond the capacity of your conscious mind. And if you're consciously attenuating to all the different aspects of nonverbal communication, all the different little gestures, micro gestures, changes in pore size and pupil dilation and ear movements and nostril flares, there's a lot of different things to pay attention to. So what I did is I studied the list, and then I turned it over to my other than conscious mind. And I allow my unconscious to process everything. And when anything sticks out, when anything is noteworthy, it makes me aware of it. It's part of our agreement between me and my other than conscious mind. And so you could make that request of your other than conscious mind, not necessarily around nonverbal communication, but phrase it this way. You don't necessarily want to remember everything about your childhood, every, past event, you don't need to remember all of it, but just ask for the noteworthy stuff, the significant events that shifted your beliefs or that could potentially hold some healing there. This is one of the surprising things to some of the clients that I've worked with on subpersonalities. Once they start revisiting or thinking about different events, new ones pop up. Oh, I didn't even remember this. This is like, I haven't thought about that in years. But once we have the context, once we have the frame by which we're searching out information, then we have an organizing principle for our other than conscious mind to bring it forth. Now, I just noticed that we're pretty close to 40 minutes here. I'm going to probably break this up into 2 parts, 2 episodes to make it more digestible. But I want to revisit the whole purpose of self-awareness. Why are we engaged in self-awareness? Well, it's to bring the unconscious into consciousness, and then you can consciously choose which aspects you want to keep and which ones you want to let go of. You basically are deciding who are you going to be. And then the other side of this, the other benefit, is you know your strengths and weaknesses. And even then, you can make a decision about your weaknesses. Are these things that you want to improve on, or are these areas that you need to delegate to somebody else, hire somebody else, or bring somebody else in to do that task? And that's where the courage comes in, to actually be willing to look at potential, quote-unquote, failings or areas that you want to be better in, and just take an assessment. Where are you right now? It doesn't matter where you are. What matters is where you want to go. How good do you want to be? That's the most important thing. I've worked with executives. I've worked with people that have been in a role, and they're failing. They're failing in aspects of that position because they're not willing to acknowledge that they're no good in a particular area. More often than not, they're not actually any good at communicating effectively with the people that work for them or that they work with. And that's typically because they think from their perspective, it's not me, it's them. Well, in a couple episodes ago, I said this is part of your self-awareness, that anything that's going on outside of you is actually operating within you. The world is a mirror for what's going on in your mind. This journey of self-awareness is never ending. I've been doing this for many, many years, many decades, and I'm still uncovering stuff, but I continue to look. It's even more exciting to me when I find something that I had previously ignored or previously wasn't aware of. Suddenly, it's a new opportunity to shift and change. And I guess that's an important point. See, the ego, when the ego is fragile, and we identify an area of opportunity or a weakness or a potential failing, we take it personal. We think that means something about us, that we're not good enough, there's something wrong with us. No, it's actually a point of awareness. We weren't aware of that before. Now that we are, we can do something about it. If you're really invested in being better, then that's an area of opportunity. I would be happy to find areas that I can improve on. And I guess we should say that when you ask your partner in crime about your potential failings, ask them to be gentle with you. Ask them to come from the context of love, that they're being loving to you because you want to grow, you want to discover areas that might be outside your conscious awareness. Now, there's always the possibility that they aren't going to be gentle with you, that they've been waiting. They've been waiting for the opportunity to tell you what's wrong with you, and that's dependent upon how often you've not been willing to listen before this. But your willingness to listen, your willingness to be open to it is an indicator of the strength of your ego or how fragile your ego might be. You see, a narcissist would never be able to listen to that feedback. They would avoid it at all costs. They would run away from this whole question. They wouldn't want to know. They don't want to know what you think about what their feelings are. They only want to hear about the accolades, about, how great they are. But your willingness to actually listen and investigate the potential failings proves that you're not a narcissist. You may have narcissistic tendencies. We all do to some degree. And I can raise my hand in that arena. I certainly did when I was younger, in my 20s, 30s, and even 40s. I had insecurities that I covered up with different strategies to come out on top. But thank God I was able to reflect on those and recognize those patterns and then release them. Now, I think I'm going to say something that I didn't say before. I haven't said it yet in this whole conversation on self-awareness. It is the greatest activity you can engage in your life, is to become self-aware. I think it was Socrates that said, "A life unexamined is a life not fully lived." And the inscription over the entrance, I don't know for sure, this is what I'm told, I wasn't there, but the inscription over the entrance to the Temple of Apollo, where the Oracle of Delphi was, read, "Know thyself." This examination of your life, this journey of self-mastery, it is the epic adventure that I speak about at the end of every episode. The spiritual adventure is your human journey, your human adventure. And to go through it with no examination, just like you're a leaf floating down the river, is not living a life of design. To me, it's less than a life. But then, I've been one to self-investigate. I've been on this journey. I've done everything I've talked about in this episode. Self-discovery, self-mastery, that's my jam. That's what I'm all about. And so, my friend, until next time, this is your friend and host, Daniel Danovi, urging you to follow your bliss. Live your life from inner signals, be inner directed as you engage in the epic adventure.